Right. Okay. So guys, we've got something different for you today. So you've not got me with my camera in my living room, but I'm having a conversation with Jason Miller. I've known Jason now. I've known Jason since since last December, pretty much. Jason is a nice guy coach, and if you don't know what that means, we're going to go through all of this in the video today, in this conversation. We talk about what the nice guy syndrome is. We're going to talk about how to overcome it with Jason. So, yeah, Jason, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about this stuff. Should be fun.
Yeah, so I check the analytics on my channel, and I know there'll be some women that would have clicked on this and been like, hang on, nice guy syndrome, what's this all about? So if you're one of those women that have watched this and you're like, what's this all about? It's also helpful to know from the other side what this is about. But if you encounter it in a guy, you'll know what the deal is. Because just to give you guys a bit of background, I was in a relationship last year. I read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, and it absolutely turned the way I saw myself and my relationships completely on its head. And I don't think my relationships will ever be the same again, because I was in a relationship at the time and I was very needy and I couldn't work out why this was. So I read the book and I thought, holy shit, this book describes me to a T. It describes me like 100%. So I thought, hang on, there's got to be other guys out there like this. I couldn't find any nice guy groups in the UK other than in London. But then I went online and found some Facebook groups, and there was quite a few. So I joined a Facebook group about nice guy syndrome, how to overcome it, and other guys going through it. Because in the book, there's about 50 or so exercises to overcome this. And I met Jason in one of the groups. Now, Jason actually has his own group and his own website for this called Planet Nice Guy. And me and Jason, we've had a few chats in the past, and Jason's helped me come to terms with the recovering nice guy syndrome and everything else. It's been a really cool process, but it's mind blowing. So that's a bit of background on how I came upon the nice guy syndrome. I identified myself pretty quickly as a recovering nice guy, or as a nice guy at the time, but recovering now. So for those who don't know, what is the nice guy syndrome?
Well, the way that I describe it is it's kind of a distorted worldview, a bunch of flawed life strategies, and then basically at the core of it is just anxiety and shame. So you've got a specific constellation of stuff that makes life that much harder to deal with. So the way, Dr. Glover, and to be clear, it's like the brilliance of that book is that he creates a profile that's easy to identify with. And so in reading the book and look at the other examples of the other guys in it, you can see yourself. If you see yourself in those, it'll suddenly consolidate all the problems you've been trying to solve in your life into basically core issues. That was my experience. My entire life had been hundreds of hours of therapy, dysfunctional family background, having difficulty in relationships, lots of confusion, lots of anxiety, depression, those kinds of things. And I didn't understand the whole picture until I read this book. And so over time, what we're discovering is that so many men identify with this set of traits or this set of tendencies or beliefs. So the way to kind of open the conversation, I'm just going to use Dr. Glover's top 3 covert contracts. So when it comes to being a nice guy, what we want to do is basically preset how we think the world should work and how relationships should work. And so we set covert contracts with people. So we have expectations of them that we don't talk about.
Okay. Yeah. That resonates.
Yeah. So that's when you're thinking in terms of like, I want you to do this for me, or I want this from you in the relationship, then that's not covert, that's overt. And you're trying to negotiate an agreement with that person. Covert is like, I don't want to tell you because I'm afraid to tell you for some reason. You might reject me, you might judge me, but then I'm going to do other strategies underneath the radar to kind of try to get what I want, and they're probably not going to work, but it's all I know how to do. And so I just keep doubling down on it anyway. So let's get into his 3 covert contracts, right? So the first one, covert contract number 1, is if I'm a good guy, then I will be liked and loved, and the people I want to have sex with will want to have sex with me.
I'm laughing because that hits home. that hits home. Yeah, because it's. I mean, for me, it was like what I noticed. The things that I noticed in Dr. Glover's book that aligned with my own life was in myself a lack of assertiveness, like a nice guy. I've been called a nice guy countless times.
Yeah, it's an insult almost.
Yeah, well, now it is, yeah. But in my private moments, I've noticed that I'd actually have quite a lot of anger and resentment. So there was a disconnect between how I was showing up to the world and how the world and how people perceived me and who I really was, you know, because I'd had a few MMA fights, and I actually love a good fight, a good scrap, a good boxing match or whatever else. And so there's a part of me that's like really aggressive, but I wasn't letting that part be seen by anyone, and it wasn't like the assertiveness wasn't there. And that transferred as well to me not wanting to communicate my needs as well. Like in the relationship that I mentioned,
mm-hmm.
The whole getting sex from doing certain actions was oh my God, that's just that just describes me to a T.
Yeah.
Without being overt about my intentions, it's like I'll try and act cool and calm and indifferent, because apparently if you're indifferent and you don't care and you're a bit like a James Bond figure, then they'll just chase you. And it's like, well, that just felt anxiety inducing and needy, and it never worked. It just caused confusion.
Well, and my version of that was just constantly ending up in the friend zone, and then not being able to change that, and having crushes and getting frustrated throughout, my 20s, and not knowing how to do that. And then even once I did get into a relationship with a woman, it would be something along the lines of, why aren't we connecting? Why aren't we getting intimate? What is the issue? There'd be issues in that area. And there's you pointed to lack of assertiveness. It really was just a question of, the notion that if I am assertive, then I will turn people off, then they will reject me or judge me. And I don't want to be a jerk. Right. So there's kind of this strange conflation of being a jerk and being mean with actually taking the lead or asking for what you want and not settling for what you don't.
Definitely. And that's for me, that's been a sign of recovery, because I've been single now for the entire year. I've had my flings, but I've been single for the entire year. And one thing I noticed that I'm doing now, more so than I wasn't before, was, I've lost my train of thought. There was something that you said just then with regards to sort of putting yourself out there. There's a fear of not wanting to be
rejected or judged.
Yeah, but now for me, it's like I'm more comfortable just speaking my mind, and it almost happens without effort.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one point it was like, if I speak my mind and I'm a bit rough around the edges and I piss her off,
mm-hmm.
then I'll be rejected or abandoned, and ultimately she won't want to have sex with me.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I've often found that the opposite seems to be the case, which is completely mind-blowing in the sense. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I'm assertive, like there's been times that I've pissed a woman off and it hasn't led to a lack of sex. So it's like, So all the assumptions I was making previously were based on some sort of toxic shame or fear of abandonment or rejection. Mm-hmm. It wasn't based on what will actually happen in reality.
Right. And that harboring that relief, and this will lead into the number 2 in a second here, but harboring that belief that fear, that if I do assert myself, people will judge me or reject me. And, we kind of go down those fears and those limiting beliefs, and we take them to their logical extreme. We end up dying alone in an alleyway, starving, and, with nobody knowing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a worst case scenario. I lose my job, I lose my girlfriend, I lose my family, I lose my friends, I don't have any money, all that. The fear is kind of like, emotionally it's taken to the logical extreme. And then we
Mm.
play out our lives in terms of protecting ourselves against that negative outcome. And it's really, that's why it's so scary for guys. So you were talking about being assertive and stating your needs. So covert contract number 2 is this is right out of Dr. Glover's playbook, is if I meet other people's needs without them having to ask, then they will meet my needs without me having to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
But,
some
yeah.
reason, it's not okay to talk about this stuff. So you got to do it under the radar, and then you hope for the best.
That was totally the case with me. It'd be, oh my God, this just resonates so much. Like, I had this thing for a while when I was single last time. I had this thing where I would love giving a woman a massage, you know. I'd light the candles, I'd light some incense, and for some reason, I'd be really determined to do this early on in the relationship or early on in knowing her. And it's like, why? Why necessarily? And if there wasn't some sort of return back, I'd feel like I'd been wronged in some way. So that shows me that was a clear example that there's a covert contract there. It wasn't saying, look, I'm going to give you a massage because I want to give you a massage and it's, you know, you've had a hard day or whatever. It's like, I'll give you a massage, but actually there's an underhanded expectation with that I'm not communicating. And that's what you're saying a covert contract is, really, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shit.
Well, it would in my life, I would do, you do things where if I was dating, I would go out of my way to be romantic or impress her in some way, right? Because I thought that's what I needed to do. It's sort of the anti-jerk. And then if I was in a relationship, then it would be all about, oh, how can I be the best boyfriend or be the best partner and do all the things at home, whether it's the chores or being responsible at home and taking care of that stuff. Again, it's kind of the classic thing in the hopes that we'll get sexy time later, right? So
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, there's something too scary about talking about what you want. And there's also something really scary about not settling for what you don't want. Right. In those relationships. And this is not just, we're speaking in terms of relationships with women primarily, but there's also, you'll do it at work too. You'll do it at work. You're hoping for something good to happen or get recognized for your work or something. You might go out of your way and burn yourself out and not get appreciated at work, get passed over for promotions or something like that. Certainly it affects us in that way. So that's number 2. You want to go to number 3?
Well, as a side note, as a way of reinforcing the point you just made, it wasn't just in my intimate relationships. It was in certain friendships and my interactions with people at work. It'd be like, I've noticed that when I wasn't around them, when I was alone, and this is a really interesting thing to note, when I was alone, I'd feel like a very different person than when I was around people. And I started observing myself honestly. And I was like, hang on, when I'm on my own, I swear a fair bit. I can be a bit vulgar. I'm like, I'm quite outspoken. I got opinions. It's like, put me in front of people that I want the approval of. Those opinions vanish, as does my edge, as does my capacity to assert myself. And instead, what will take priority within me is, are these people okay? Am I okay in these people's eyes?
Oh yeah.
So it changed, and it was like, yeah, I'd noticed that I'd be very different in private, which is why I'd say for a while I was like under the impression, I'm like, oh, I'm an introvert. I just need to recharge. It's like, am I an introvert, or is it that I'm not actually just, I'm just socially anxious because I'm hiding parts of myself around people through fear of abandonment or rejection? It's like, I think it's more likely to be the latter, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I think that also makes me think of something like that I used to worry about a lot when I was younger, was the worlds colliding. There's an episode of Seinfeld where they talk about the worlds colliding. Like, you don't know how to act. Like, you act a certain way at work, you act a certain way with your family, you act a certain way with your friends. And then if they all come together for some event, like a birthday party or something, then you freak out because you don't know how to act. Yeah. That was me. like I would have literally like really bad anxiety, and people would ask me, why are you acting so weird? Why are you being so difficult? It's because I was basically used to putting up kind of the image of what I thought other people wanted in order to fit in. Put those three
Yeah.
different contexts together, and then all of a sudden none of the three apply.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And you can think about it, that falls under covert contract, true, because I'm trying to meet their needs as to who they think I should be, right? And then they're going to give me the approval or the connection that I'm looking for without me having just to be authentic and just say, just be present and ask or say yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What's I'm curious now because I saw you sent me the document before we started chatting. I saw the top two, but I got distracted. I didn't see the third one. So what's covert contract number 3?
Oh, third
I
is
read
my
the book. I
favorite.
forgot.
Yeah. I was racing towards it because it's my absolute favorite a minute ago. But it's, if I do everything right, then I will have a smooth, problem-free life.
That can be quite that can be quite under the surface. That can be for me. That can be quite a pervasive one. Because I think we spoke earlier in the year. We spoke a couple of times, and you pointed this one out to me. Where I was thinking that if I just if all my ducks, I got all my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Then at some point in the future, when I've mastered all of it, mastered my habits, mastered my health, my career, got the perfect woman, all these things, then life and all of its difficulties would be non-existent. Well, the difficulties would be non-existent. Life would be absolutely perfect. And it's like, I didn't know that assumption was under the surface of my behaviours. I didn't know it wasn't there. I didn't notice it. It was when you started pointing it out. It's like the smooth, problem-free life. Are you expecting things to be perfect? I'm like,
oh.
and I was like, no, but yes.
It's very much under the radar. It's very much running in a subconscious level, and it's this assumption that, well, there's a really bad assumptions baked into this one. It's like, first of all, do everything right. So there's some out there, whatever I do, there's a perfect way to do it to 100% get the right result that I want. Right. So this is the source of all perfectionism and all procrastination. So if I'm learning to do something new, that, and maybe you can think of an example because I can't come up with one right now, but I'm learning to do something. I have an expectation that if I can get it right the first time and do it perfectly, then I will give myself acceptance and other people will give me acceptance or connection or what I'm looking for. So therefore I'm really outcome dependent. Like my whole sense of well-being hinges on whether I do this perfectly or not. So then I'm going to have a lot of anxiety and fear and a lot of pressure to get it right the first time. And the reason I'm working at this so hard is because I believe on some level that this notion of smooth, problem-free life is achievable and desirable. This fantasy. So, so I'm living in this, and the corollary that I add to this one is that we believe other people are managing to have a smooth, problem-free life. We're assuming they are. We're assuming it's easy for them. And we're assuming because it's hard for us, there's something wrong with us. That's my corollary. So this is why this one's my favorite, because it's it's the one that's most pervasive.
Yeah, and it's the most rich with ways in which it affects every aspect of your life. I mean, the thing that came up for me when you were talking was how this assumption would essentially, because one thing that came up when you were saying that, it's like this self-absorbed thinking in relation to something that's not going smooth and problem-free. When something's going difficult, there's just this reference point back to the self where it's like, well, because I'm trying to live a smooth, problem-free life and I believe that that's possible, what have I done wrong to warrant this happening? So it's like, yeah, it's the self-absorbed thoughts. And it also
endless cycle, always chasing your tail. Yeah.
And it seems to me that an assumption like that would make a person's would make a person very unresilient emotionally. Because it was like, the thing is, it's one thing I've noticed about the generation that came before me, like my father's generation. It's like one thing that they seem to have is like this, like when things are going shit, it can be a bit pessimistic at times, I've noticed, but generally speaking, it's like, well, this is life, I'll just carry on. And it's like, I don't see that as much with people my age. There's like, something's bad, the world's this. If this is bad, then the world is this. Things should be better, etc. And I'm like, okay, cool. But also life is also pretty shit sometimes. So yeah, that was just a little side note.
Well,
yeah.
It's interesting to point that out because, you're in your 20s and I'm already in my 50s. So I felt the same way as you in my 20s.
Yeah.
A lot of frustration in the sense that why doesn't the world work the way I think it should? I mean, I think that's almost typical. Like when you're in your 20s, I think that's almost the typical angst that we all have is coming to terms with, you spent your entire life at this point structured learning. You've been living under the roof of your parents, let's say. And as you start to establish yourself in the real world, all the assumptions that you've made based on what you've learned so far are pretty much destroyed. You can't carry kind of a lot of your school training, your family training, kind of once you hit the real world. It's a lot harder to maintain those expectations and beliefs in the real world. And it's a shock. It's a shock. I mean, it's something that I went through. It's something as I talk to more guys in that age bracket, it's what they're going through. And it's a period of time where you're struggling because as any of us would with belief systems, whether it's a self-limiting belief or something that you've carried on to challenge. Anytime we're challenging a self-limiting belief, it feels like a threat to your identity or who you are. And that's difficult to make the transition. And because I believe in your 20s, you're bombarded with situations that challenge all of your beliefs quite often, that it's difficult to manage. And I attribute that, for me personally, why I was so anxious and depressed in my 20s, why I was struggling so hard, is because I thought the world was completely different from it was. And that's part of the brilliance of looking at nice guy syndrome or the nice guy profile, because it so clearly illustrates what my flawed worldview was. And these covert contracts that we're talking about, it's all in there, and it lays it all out. And then you look at these, and it kind of that's Dr. Glover's brilliance in the way that he sums it all up, is that it kind of unwinds everything for you. Summarizes and unwinds it for you. You're just kind of, oh, that's all I need to focus on now. Yeah. So gives you that clarity.
Yeah. A question that came up, because we were talking about age.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, do nice guys in this sense tend to be younger or older, or is there not really much in it?
Oh, no, it's all over.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, over the years that I've been a coach, the age range has been, I think the youngest guy that I ever worked with was 22, 23, and the oldest guy was, I want to say 74.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a long life already lived with these assumptions just operating in the background, isn't it? Bloody hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even in his case, ex-military too, so kind of bucking the stereotypes a little bit,
Yeah. Ex-military, recovering nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. So there was something else that came up, because when you were talking, there's just a bunch of questions that came up. I thought would be really cool. So keeping it really simple, how in experiential, direct experience, moment to moment ways, how does nice guy syndrome show up? Because for me, it showed up as neediness, like excessive neediness.
Mm-hmm.
And this showed up in my last relationship more than any other relationship, and I don't entirely know why that is. I don't know whether it was the dynamic between us, but generally speaking, it'd be like I just knew that it was mostly affection and sex I wanted, and I noticed I was just unconsciously fashioning my behaviours to try and meet that end, and by doing that, I'd be very anxious. Like I'd be really anxious that if I didn't get this result, this would mean something bad.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't relax. I couldn't enjoy myself. And I'd often get really snappy. This is another thing that it says in the book. Women who have been going out with or married to nice guys for a long time, or they generally see a pattern where the nice guy will occasionally have a rage attack,
Mm-hmm.
or just occasionally just lash out for no apparent reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that a few times. It'd be like off something that sort of made me snap, and I'd just be talking all sorts of like really hurtful shit, and it's like, I'd just completely just bleh. And then it'd flip back, and I'd go back to sort of like trying to get approval again. It was just chaos. So like, aside from, because for me it was anxiety, it was neediness, it was being manipulative and dishonest, because that's another thing that it says in the book too, isn't it? How nice guys are fundamentally dishonest. Mm-hmm. And they have also beliefs that I'm a nice guy, I'm this and that, I should get this and that, I don't know what's going on, it's all her fault. It's like, actually,
good luck with that one.
yes, as a matter of fact, you actually have a lot more to do with this than you're letting yourself believe. So aside from those I've mentioned, are there anything else that comes up as a potential signal that a nice person might have nice guy syndrome?
Oh yeah, that would be exactly it, because you were illustrating the catch-22 that these covert contracts put nice guys in. Because you're so afraid to put your needs up front, to either act on them or speak about them, because you're so afraid to do that, it keeps you from getting the love and connection that you want. And then the other thing is, one thing we haven't really talked about with nice guy syndrome is this idea of toxic shame, which is this pervading belief that you're not good enough, and that it's imprinted on us when we're very young, even pre-language. And it's kind of this gnawing belief that never goes away. And one of the ways that nice guys make that feeling go away temporarily is getting sex and romantic validation from women. Right? So it gives you temporary relief. And then when she's not giving it to you, it comes back up. And then you start getting angry because she gave it to you. Now she's not giving it to you. So your neediness is from that. And the problem is, in order to meet that need, you have to be more overt with who you are and what you want. You have to be more authentic. But since you're running covert contracts and you're being inauthentic, what happens is you get manipulative because you're afraid to be authentic. Because again, it's a catch-22. So the toxic shame says, I'm not, no matter what I do, I'm not good enough. All I can do is try to manipulate people to temporarily give me what I want, to temporarily take my pain away. But the way I'm going about it, I'm never going to ever actually get what I need or want. And so I'm going to spiral and get anxious and depressed forever. And until I actually observe what I'm doing, primarily in these covert contracts, and start to change my behaviors and do the really scary stuff and face the possibility of being judged or face the possibility of being rejected, and learn to handle your own feelings when that happens.
That's mind-blowing, because that's an interesting one, isn't it, as well? It's like, it's not that when you put yourself out there, you will never get rejected. That's not the world. But it's that when you do that more often, you realize that it doesn't hurt as much as you may think, or you build up a tolerance or a resilience to it. Mm-hmm. There's something really interesting that resonates with me about what you said, how the sex and affection temporarily removes the toxic shame. Now, for me, that resonates really deeply, because for a while, I don't remember exactly when this started, but there'd be in me an overvaluation of sex. Like I would think, obviously, well, young lad, think about it a lot, obviously, but like there'd be something else attached to it it didn't seem like it was healthy. Mm-hmm. I'd talk to friends about it and be like, yeah, me too, man, etc., etc. But I just had this inkling, there's just this suspicion that I was like, hang on, there's something about it for me that just seems like I need it, like a little bit too much. Like if I don't have sex for a couple of weeks, like this was a couple of years ago, I went through a phase where if I didn't have sex for a couple of weeks, I would be really depressed. Mm-hmm. It's like, why is that? Why is that exactly? And it's, and I mean, I can contrast that with how I've been this year. And it's been very much take it or leave it. And it's like, well, that's one sign of gradual recovery. And it's something that I always knew that I needed to sort of to heal in a sense, because it's like, and that's it, isn't it? Because that's the thing that affected my last relationship too. It's like the fundamental problem is I felt this toxic shame. This toxic shame was meant that I could not in the moment have the courage, or I did not have the courage to be authentic, because I thought that the person I was being authentic to would reject, shame, or abandon me, thus amplifying the toxic shame I already felt.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still a human with emotional needs, so I would try and get those needs met without being authentic and risking it.
There you go.
And then I just do all sorts of tactics, you know. And so the red, I don't know if you guys watching this, I don't know, because I've not talked about it on my channel before, but I hope to going forward, because I'm going to speak gradually more to men, but I'll talk about that in another video. There's a philosophy called the red pill philosophy, and there's MGTOW, which men go their own way, and there's a couple others that have different names. I can't remember off the top of my head. But during this relationship, I sort of drifted into red pill philosophy a little bit. And red pill philosophy is like it teaches you how to behave to get women just wanting you all the time, basically. And I drifted into that, and that caused me to try and act like James Bond with my then girlfriend, and act really indifferent to anything she did. And the inauthenticity, it made me so fucking anxious. I didn't know who I was. I was like, right, I feel this thing, but I'm going to suppress it and act really calm and collected. But actually, most of the time, the way that I'd show up, I'd just say nothing. I'd just be non-talkative and just not say a word for like an hour. Like, I'm smooth. I was like water off a duck's back. In actual fact, I was just sat there being quietly anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just the sex thing. That's a big deal for nice guys, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, it's at the core, they're trying to put the responsibility of feeling good or taking away their discomfort on the other person, right? If she gives me what I want, or she behaves the way I want her to behave, then I'll feel good. And I feel bad right now, so I need her to make me feel good. I need to get that sex or validation from her to make me feel good. So there's no responsibility on the nice guy's part to take ownership of whatever emotional states he's in. There's a constant external neediness to get. When we say validation, he's basically asking other people to do certain things, covertly ask other people to do certain things, in order to give him what he thinks he wants, in order to feel okay. And you can't, to me, that's kind of nice guy style codependence, where I'm constantly managing the other person's feelings. I'm trying to manage to keep them in approval of me, keep them liking me, trying to figure out what they want, trying to, any discomfort is bad. It means, if she gets angry at me, then that means I'm not worthy, that I might lose her. And all those kinds of complications. So what I do very often in my conversation with the guys that I work with is get them to practice stop expecting the woman to make you feel a certain way. Stop trying to get her to do stuff to make you feel okay or to feel good. And when she doesn't do what you want to do, that's your problem, not hers. And have that conversation with yourself before you interact with her. Right.
So yeah, before we get on to how you work with clients to overcome this, what I'd like to talk about briefly is how this actually occurs. Like, how does a person develop nice guy syndrome? Where does this come from? Because in the book, it talks about loads of different potential causes. Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to hear it from you.
Well, I see kind of a lot of variations on this, kind of the there's some sense of not wanting, in my case, not wanting to be like my jerk narcissistic dad who always caused trouble, who is what we used to call a male chauvinist, was a bully, was very, very macho and posturing when he wanted to be. And so that, so sound familiar? So for me having been, I would say in many ways psychologically abused by him, I decided that dad was bad. I'm going to be the anti-dad, And in doing so, I went into this pursue safety and neutrality, and not be pushy, and be nice, be the opposite of dad. And that was the strategy that I chose. That was the decision that I made when I was young.
That is absolutely bang on. Before you carry on, I just want to mention, so for me, because I feel like I've got to get this thought out there because it's a big deal, because I feel like I've come to a decision about this recently, or a revelation. So my dad is exactly how you described.
Mm-hmm.
It's like powerful, hyper masculine bloke, fiercely like intimidating, fiercely competent at what he does, just very, very strong character. So when I was younger, there was a kind of emotional supply I kind of needed but didn't get really. I got that from my mother, but she passed away when I was 14. So it's like, since I was 14, it's like I thought masculinity means that, and I have a bad feeling about that for some reason. But then there's like a void of the femininity and the feminine nurturing aspect. So then I would try and embody that. And then that, I've come to the realization that's led to the kind of overvaluation of female approval in my life. It's like a rejection of masculinity on the one hand, and an overvaluation of female approval because the thing that I didn't sort of get when I needed it. So it was like, it was a whole mishmash of different things. But when you talk about the dad being that kind of figure, it mentions it in the book as well, which was something I resonated with. When you say, I'm not going to be like dad. And usually the dad is a masculine figure. Mm-hmm. So it usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, it usually leads to a man rejecting or suppressing his masculine qualities, mm-hmm. of assertiveness, of taking the lead, and all these other behaviors. Because it's like, if I do that, then I might be like my dad, and I can't be like my dad, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, and even dipping my toe in that water is scary, because I'm afraid that I'll just, on a dime, I'll turn and become the jerk, right? I think you're describing it very well. That we take things, and Glover talks about nice guys having very black and white, all or nothing thinking. We take things to extreme very, very quickly, and don't really have a sense of nuance or have a sense of the gray area of it. And this would be definitely a case where we made that decision so hard and fast that it's like, we're so afraid of being like dad, we actually seek out ways to be not dad. Yeah. So we're actively in our strategies, in our covert contracts, we're basically actively trying to be perfect at being not dad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah. So there was another thing that we just close Facebook because it keeps going off.
Don't look at that.
There was another thing that kind of that resonated with me just before we move on to how you actually sort this out. So when I was younger, I didn't have a male teacher until I was like in secondary school. So that was until I was like 12. Mm-hmm. So one thing that Dr. Glover talks about in the book is how this is really common because teaching is a female-dominated profession. So you get boys who don't have a strong male father figure necessarily, especially if the father's absent emotionally or otherwise. Then he described it beautifully, how a boy's early years in education can easily be like basic training in how to please a woman. It was exactly like that for me because I was growing up and I wanted approval because I was just like, what, I'm a kid. I want to know how to live. Help me out, will you? And so it's like, and I've got these strong female figures that are saying, no, you should have done that. Do this. We like you when you do this. Don't do that. We hate you when you do that. It's like, that's how I read it as a kid. So it's like, okay, well, I need to make you happy because that makes me feel good. And if I don't make you happy, then I feel bad and you shout at me. So it's like, it just makes complete sense to me how you grow up with these assumptions. And because a child under a certain age, I think it talks about in the book as well, how a child, when things happen, a child refers it back to the self. It's like a child has to be very egoistic. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if that happened, what did it mean about me? Mm-hmm.
Or how did I
Um,
cause it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in some ways, I feel like it's like the nice guy syndrome. Men who are nice guy syndrome. It's like they're playing out unchallenged childhood behaviors
Mm-hmm.
in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was another potential cause of it that I just thought I'd bring up because I know that resonates. I know that resonates with a lot of guys that I'm close friends with.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So yeah. So how once a person has identified,
Mm-hmm.
we either read the book or that from what you've just said, I've identified that okay, maybe I'm a nice guy. Maybe there's something to this. What does a person do? So
Usually what nice guys do now, as you mentioned, he's got the breaking free activities that he lists out in the book. So the book was published in the early 2000s, and there's something like, I want to say 60 something BFAs in the book. These are all like introspective questions. These are writing exercises. These are really interesting things to do that can be extremely helpful. So what do typical nice guys do? They say, okay, I must do them all in sequence. I must get them all perfectly done. And at the end, I will be fully recovered. Right. And then nine times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's basically I get to the third or fourth one and then I just stop.
yeah.
So one of the first instructions with the BFAs is to start connecting with other guys. So the first push for newbies, the first push is to find some sort of a nice guy group, a bunch of nice guys to chat with and share stories with. So that's the first initial push. And there's certainly plenty of areas, whether you're on Reddit or Facebook or even the ancient Dr. NoMoreMrNiceGuy.com forum or my group, PlanetNiceGuy.com. There's millions of them online. So you end up having, getting into conversations, discussing it and getting feedback and getting advice. The thing that guys do is it's important to drive home the point that a lot of what we don't have as nice guys, and we didn't talk about this earlier, is we don't connect with other men because we're like not dads, so therefore not masculine, therefore we want to go safe path is to connect with women instead of men.
Yeah,
Right?
that's totally true. That's totally true. And I'm gonna make a special point of that because there's the amount of guys I've met who connect better with women and who around hyper masculine men, like those proper like oh my son, they sort of shrink like ugh. Because that was me for so long around lads that had like watch football and get pissed and like banter and all that stuff. I just shrivel. And one part of my recovery from this was spending more time around men.
Mm-hmm.
And initially that was like, I had some resistance to that because
Mm-hmm.
it's as if I felt like I wasn't going to get the supply that I'd usually get. Or I'd just be like, it's just not as appealing to me. And it's like, well, maybe.
Well, there's no female validation in it. So if your prime directive is to get that female validation so you can feel okay, then you're basically, you're not, you don't want to, male validation has no meaning for you when you're playing that game. And I think that's one of the aspects of connecting with men and realizing that you can get through meaningful connections with men and get validation as friends. That in and of itself actually is comforting. You can feel better about yourself, and you can offload a lot of the pressure that we put on women to make us feel okay. And you discover that being with men helps you feel okay separately from women. You need less, right? Your mates will support you and give you a safe place. And when you start to consciously look at it in terms of, okay, this is where I recharge. This is where I emotionally go. This is where the guys say I'm okay. I don't need a woman to tell me okay. And when I'm with them, if I can just let go of my anxiety and get into the groove with a bunch of male friends, that's my refuge. That's my safe place. And most guys don't see that or think about it and appreciate it in those terms and rely on that for that energy to nourish you. Because as you're playing the game of not dad and not masculinity, you're actually letting that aspect of yourself atrophy.
Mm.
Right? You're letting your own sense of maleness, your own sense of connection to other men atrophy. And you need to get back in there and start, well, you're a fitness guy. You need to get back in there and start working that muscle. So that's kind of the idea. And then once you learn how nourishing that is to your male psyche, then this sort of this neediness and dependency on women tends to lighten up.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first things that shows up in the book for guys when they read it.
Yeah. And I can safely say that that works.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because the thing I read in the book was when Dr. Glover was talking to the wives of these guys, some of them, it's like they were describing that when he started spending more time with male friends, that sort of saved their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you are only getting your emotional needs met from one person,
mm-hmm.
that's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of covert or over expectation you're placing upon a person.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's I feel like that's a biggie.
Mm-hmm. So when we step into getting help for this kind of thing, whether you're seeking out a therapist or a coach like me to get direct one-on-one help with this, a therapist is going to focus, as you have a background in that as well. A therapist is going to look at your history, give you a sense of the psychological dysfunction, the models that brought you to where you are, help you understand and process the emotions with that, offer you strategies and ways of thinking that are different, help move you along. It's I would say a more of an exploratory or open-ended process, and then we coaches take over where therapists leave off. We're dealing with the practical aspects of what you're doing, and many of my clients have therapists also. And so what we're doing is we're looking, okay, we're actually doing the practical aspects. What are your needy behaviors that you want to change? What are more effective behaviors? What are the practices that you're doing to handle anxiety? What are the practices you're doing to handle self-limiting beliefs and shame? What are the social skills that you need to develop? Dating, communication, charisma, influence, career. What are those skills that you're lacking? Assertiveness. What does that look like? How do you actually communicate it? Dealing with conflict. How do you actually prepare for difficult conversations? All of that bundled together is the follow-on. And a big reason why I am a coach is because I've spent hundreds of hours with therapists, and they got me to a certain point. But because I was such a fixer and perfectionist, I had to go more. I had to have more.
Yeah,
right.
That's the same here, because that's the same for me. Now, I've not seen my therapist for over 2 months because I realised that I felt like I was going in circles. I felt like there were certain things that I just, I don't know. It's like I needed more of a kick up the arse than to keep unpacking more stuff. Because it felt like, tell you what it felt like, Jason. It felt like I had a room just full of boxes. I was unpacking them all and getting all the shit out, but I was making a mess of the room, and there was no like I wasn't putting them back in different boxes and tidying stuff up. It was just making a mess. So, but yeah. So I think that kind of covers it. I think we spoke about what nice guy syndrome is, how it shows up, where a little bit about where it comes from, and the book's it's a really good book. I consider it pretty much a must read for a guy. I think at least once a man has to read this book, because it's such a big deal, and the potential for change upon reading it and self-reflection, it's brilliant. But we can't cover the whole book in a single conversation. But we've covered it. So that is No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. Get that book, read it. I suggest to people watching this, I suggest you read it. If this conversation resonated, because usually what people have the experience of hearing about nice guy syndrome, and it's like a light bulb goes off, and they're like, oh shit, are they describing me? And so then, yeah, and this is how the journey started for me. So yeah, just to let you guys know as well, Jason, planetniceguy.com. It's It's a mighty network, so it's off of Facebook. Is the man's gone ahead and done
Yes.
his thing. He's got a Facebook group too, but is directing people away from it. So you guys watching this channel, what my thoughts on social media are. Even though I'm using it loads more nowadays for my own fitness business, but we'll not talk about that. So yeah, if you go check out Jason Miller, I'm going to put all the details in the video description below. You'll probably get another intro from me at the end of this video.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Well, Jason, I just want to say thank you very much for the conversation, my friend. And I'm going to ask the people watching this and see if they fancy watching us talk again, because I know that we've talked about a ton of topics, not just nice guy syndrome.
Yes, we have fun conversations.
Yeah, we do. It'd be cool to record them, and if people got value from this conversation, we'll certainly make more. But yeah, no, thank you. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Talk to you next time. See you
Take
guys.
care.
All right.